According to some history books, World War II may not have happened had Japanese Jiu-Jitsu not saved Adolf Hitler's life. As bizarre as this story may sound, it's a good example of how the butterfly effect can have a significant impact on historical events. In this case, a suicidal Adolf Hitler tried to shoot himself in the head but was stopped by Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. At least, this is the story according to certain history books. So, as a result of one woman knowing Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, millions of innocent lives may have been lost. Interestingly, this kind of story isn't too uncommon throughout history, but when looking at Nazi myths, there may have been quite a number of them throughout this time. We shall delve deeper into the story and see what actually happened. You may think it was odd that Nazi Germany embraced Jiu-Jitsu, which was quintessentially Japanese. However, at the time, the two superpowers had close ideological ties and would go on to fight side by side in World War II. Therefore, some have argued that Germany embraced Jiu-Jitsu because of its strong masculine culture. After the humiliation of World War I reparations, this combative image was something that many ordinary Germans embraced in a bid to regain a sense of unity. Arguably, this is the case, as Jiu-Jitsu gripped Germany but didn't really take off in other parts of Western Europe. By the 1930s, Jiu-Jitsu peaked in Germany and was the main martial art. Remember, this was during an era where martial arts such as Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were nowhere near as popular as they are today. Founded hundreds of years earlier, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art that uses standing grappling techniques. Overall, it isn't too dissimilar from Judo, but has a greater emphasis on standing submissions such as the straight arm lock. Similar techniques were used to restrain people and control their limbs as part of self-defense. Of course, there's a bit more to it than that, but these days Japanese Jiu-Jitsu still lives on. Having said that, its popularity has declined in recent years, which isn't too surprising, seeing as similar can be said for lots of traditional martial arts. Still, its legacy continues and it helps shape the likes of Judo, Aikido and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. As you can tell, it was very influential whilst also being pretty raw compared to the aforementioned arts. So just how did Japanese Jiu-Jitsu save the life of Adolf Hitler? In 1923, Hitler made a daring push for power and staged the infamous Beer Hall Putsch. This is where Hitler and a group of allies tried to take over the current government at the time in Munich. Ultimately, this failed, and it wouldn't be Hitler's day in terms of gaining power. Whilst the Beer Hall Putsch did gain him attention, it also slowed his eventual rise to power. As a result, Hitler was put on trial in 1924 and would eventually be jailed, which is where he wrote Mein Kampf. During the aftermath of this, Hitler was hiding from the police with a woman named Helen Hanfstaengl. She was a follower of Hitler who was asked by a policeman if she knew where he was. She then confessed, and Hitler gathered his pistol and went to shoot himself in the head. It was at this point Hanfstaengl apparently used Japanese Jiu-Jitsu to control his shoulder and isolate his arm. Due to the force of the joint lock, Hitler's pistol fell from his hand and hit the floor. Ultimately, Hitler did not kill himself, at least not until many years later after his failure of World War II. However, there are some conflicting reports about this. This story was told by Ernst Hanfstaengl, who was Helen's husband at the time. He would later go on to defect to the USA after falling out with Hitler after seeing his murderous intentions. Interestingly though, Helen's own account of the incident was very different. In her personal notes, she never mentioned Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, but instead wrote about how she calmly grabbed Hitler's gun and disarmed him. By her account, it almost sounded like Hitler physically gave up when she grabbed the gun. Nonetheless, this may have been an example of someone using Japanese Jiu-Jitsu without really knowing. For example, some street fights involve classic judo throws by those that have never even seen or trained judo. Sometimes people can react naturally and practice martial arts without even thinking about it. This could have happened here, or it could be less dramatic than the story. Sadly, we'll never know, and this will forever remain as yet another obscure story surrounding Adolf Hitler. Overall, it's bizarre to think that martial arts may have led to World War II. Whilst this may be a bit of a stretch, it's still a good example of someone having good intentions eventually leading to something dark and destructive. Of course, it's not known if this was actually the case, but it's certainly plausible. One thing worth noting, though, is that Nazi Germany and 1920s Germany genuinely loved Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and were its biggest fan base in terms of mainland Europe.